Okay, so we're going to work at making a collar. Now, the collar that I'm going to do is a particular style that I like to do, and I'm going to show you how to put that together. So, with a few simple tools, we're going to see what we can do. First thing we need to know is what size of collar do we want to make. Now, obviously, the neck measurement is going to be the biggest factor here, so I happen to know, because I'm making this for somebody, that I am making this collar for a 16-inch neck, which, as we will see later, because of the way it's attached, I'm going to need a little bit of extra space. So what I want to do here is measure out my material, my leather, and I'm using a black garment weight or light chap weight hide in cowhide. I am going to measure this out to 18 inches. And I want to start, you can see I've got kind of a rough edge here. Obviously I need a straight edge. So I'm going to measure a straight edge first, plus get my length. So I'm going to measure my 1810 right there, 18 inches. Now this particular collar is going to be 1.25 inches wide. I've played around with a couple of different measurements before, and this is the one that works best. Certainly for the buckle size, and you'll see with the rest of the construction why that's going to work a little bit better. So we start here with our 18-inch line, and we're going to fold this over. We're basically making it double width because of the way that this piece is constructed. And so if I'm going to do 1.25 inches, I need to measure a total of 2.5 inches of leather. So let me mark my center point and then my 2.5. And I use a square that I've got here to make sure that I'm marking my edges straight. I need the corners flush to make sure my measurements are sound. So I'm marking a straight edge down here to my 2.5 inch mark off of my starting point and through my half mark. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. So, let's mark our 2.5 inches. Where are we marked here? There we go. To our 2.5 inches. So make sure we're straight, a nice square edge, and mark that off. And as you can see, this is a fairly simple process. The halfway mark is an important measurement to have because we are going to fold this in half and attach it. So we get that, which is our edge point, and then we need our halfway marker. Now how you choose to cut this out is entirely up to you. I tend to be fairly simple. I've got a pair of leather shears that I use, so I'm going to cut this out and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so as you can see, I've got this kind of roughly cut out. Just makes it easier to work with than having the whole hide, and just using a simple pair of any kind of decent sharp scissors, I'm going to cut this out along my outside edges. And just like that, you can see we have our 18 inches by 2.5 inches. Start with the next step and see where we have to go from there. The first thing I have is I have some, which is my full bottle here, there we go, some I got this from Tandy Leather. This is EcoFlow glue. Low, but that's okay. So there we go. Okay, so we apply our glue. There's all kinds of tools you can use for this. I've used foam brushes in the past, but the easiest thing actually is just to use your finger. You want everything out to the end. But we get this all put together right to the edges. And this is why we marked our center point, which is probably going to be difficult to see on the camera. But with the lighting I have here, I can see where my center point is. Let's get this all glued up. Make sure we're glued to the center point. Get everything put together. And there we have it. Okay, so here we are, right back down to the middle. Get everything attached. And what we're going to let this do is we're going to let this sit and let that glue dry up a bit. It makes it a little bit easier for everything else that's going on. Now the one thing we need on our black piece before we go ahead and start doing the stitching is some Velcro. This is just regular Velcro, as you can see. The nice thing I like about Velcro is that it's lateral strength. Pulling it sideways is really hard to pull apart versus pulling it up and down. The only thing you want to keep in mind is that if this is the facing side, meaning the side of the collar that's facing out, you want the soft part of the Velcro, as opposed to the rough part of the Velcro, to be facing the skin. So if any Velcro is exposed, it's not going to become kind of an irritant on the neck, as it were. So what we want to do is just glue this on again. So if this is the facing side, it goes on the back. That's the part that's going to be touching the skin. Just standard white glue. Again, the glue isn't what's going to be holding it on. We're actually going to be stitching this on. But this actually makes it much easier for the Velcro to stay in place when we do the sewing. Get it set close to the edge. And again, one of the things you'll notice is that this does not go edge to edge. This is 1.25 inches collar, so you'll notice that the Velcro is only 1 inch wide, which leaves about 1/8 of an inch on either side. Again, that just reduces the amount of exposure of the Velcro to the actual skin. So we've got one side on. Let's get the other side glued up here, and we will be ready to go. And then once that's done, then we can run it through the sewing machine, and we can run the red through the sewing machine, and we will be all set to move on to the next step after that. So again, we have our Velcro on one side. Obviously the Velcro's got to go on the other side for it to connect. So we'll give ourselves some space, give ourselves probably again 1/8 of an inch on either side. Attach that, and we are now ready to sew. Okay, so as you can see here, I've just got a standard sewing machine. This is actually just a regular Kenmore home sewing machine. Fairly certain that if people have looked into the possibility of sewing leather, a lot of people have said don't use home machines for that, and I guess to a large extent that's probably true, but I'm using a garment weight, like I said, or a light chap hide for this, so it's not that bad. The one thing I would recommend though is making sure that you replace your needle with a proper leather needle. I'm actually using color matching thread. I'm doing red, so I've got red thread on there. I'll swap that out after I'm done with the red and do the black. But what you're looking at doing here is basically just doing 2 straight stitch seams along either side of the collar strapping. So this machine works fine for that. I know that because I've done this before a number of times. But as you can see, I've got everything already set up for the red. I'll swap the thread out and do the black here in a second. But there are some things you have to know when you're working with leather on a standard machine. The one thing is that the feed dogs, which are these things under here that push your fabric through, oftentimes don't have enough grip or strength to push the leather through. So you have to make sure that you're fairly diligent about making sure that you are sort of helping the leather along. So you want to get your feet down. I like to get it started by hand, just cranking it by hand, as you can see. I've got probably an 1/8 inch seam on there, and then what you'll see is I'll be ready to go here and start running it through. Now as you can see, I'm sort of pushing it through, and then once it's through enough, I can actually just pull it through on the other side. And although the machine's capable of going faster, I don't want to crank it up and make sure I get a nice straight seam. So I'm holding my fabric in place, in this case my leather, to make sure that it's going through straight, and then pulling it through from the other side. So I've got to do the other side now, but as you can see, the machine handles this just fine. Okay, so we're back. I'm ready to get the other side done. But for a simple project like this, which is really just essentially doing a straight line, this machine has just proven incredibly versatile and useful for me. So again, let's get this started here. Get on the other side and pull it through, and it's the same thing as last time, just run it all the way through. As you can see, with a standard home sewing machine, you can sew leather. So if you've got some concerns, or if you do a lot of sewing on your machine and you're worried about it, make sure you take some precautions. But as you can see, got a nice even seam, nice and straight, and that stuff that we had glued together is held together now by the stitching. Okay, so you just watched me put the red leather through, which was fine. Of course, the problem with this now is with the Velcro. We're adding a layer. And not only are we adding a layer, the backing on the Velcro can be a little stiff. So you just want to be cautious. Again, this is just a standard home machine, and so it's not as powerful as a lot of industrial machines. But as you can see, as I'm cranking this by hand, it'll do the job quite well. So again, I'm just hand cranking it for now. Everything's set to go with the pedal, but I just want to get everything through, at least through the Velcro, to get it set in place. Again, keeping my seams nice and straight, because this is going to be visible on the finished product, so we want it to look nice. So we're through the Velcro now. And again, we want to pull the leather through, make sure everything is going through at a nice smooth pace. Now as we get up to the end, we're coming up to the other side of the Velcro, as you can see there. So we just want to be careful running that section through. Now the difference is that this is a finished length size. This is actually the size that we're going to be making the collar. So I'm hand cranking it through because I actually want to finish the seams on all four sides. So what I'm going to do is just hand crank this through the end, because we want the Velcro attached on 3 of the sides to make sure that it stays down, because as we put the collar on and take it off, of course, that seam is going to get a lot more use. So run it through. As you can see, we're good on this side, and again, I'm going to hand crank it to get it started. But again, especially with the Velcro on the other side, you'll notice that the feed dogs have a hard time pushing this thickness through, especially with that soft side of the Velcro. So you just want to make sure that you get this started well. And then you can go ahead and use the pedal and start pushing it through. Again, making sure your seams are nice and straight. Hand crank this around to get to the edge. And then again, I want to turn this around and get that last seam edge on there. And because we're on the edge, I'm going to go ahead and actually backstitch this just to give us a nice firm lock on that side. And there you go. That's it. That's the blank done. Now we're ready to move on to the next step, cleaning this up and getting ready to put the hardware on.